The village that disappeared overnight. The vanishing of Hoer Verde. Imagine waking up one morning to find an entire village gone. Not a single soul left behind. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no bodies, just an empty town frozen in time. This isn't a horror movie plot. This is the true and terrifying mystery of Hoer Verde, the village that disappeared overnight, leaving behind one cryptic message that still haunts investigators to this day. And the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. A village lost to time. The story begins in 1923, deep in the Brazilian countryside, where a quiet, unassuming village named Hoer Verde nestled among the rolling green hills. Life here was simple yet self-sufficient. The 600 residents of Hoer Verde were farmers, craftsmen, and tradesmen who lived harmoniously in a town untouched by the rapid industrialization happening elsewhere in the world. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where families had lived for generations, and where nothing unusual ever happened, until the day they vanished. To understand just how bizarre this case truly is, you have to picture the moment of discovery. Imagine being the traveler who first walked into the village that morning. Everything appeared frozen in time. A half-eaten meal still sat on a wooden dining table, chairs slightly pulled back as if someone had just stood up. A pot of stew still simmered on a stove, left to burn as if the person cooking had abandoned it mid-stir. Horses remained tied up, restless and neighing in their pens, while stray dogs wandered the streets searching for their owners. But there were no people, not a single soul. Even stranger, there were no signs of a struggle. If an enemy force had raided the village, where were the broken doors, the scattered belongings, the bodies? If the villagers had fled, why was there no sign of a hasty departure? No carts packed with belongings, no footprints leading away. It was as if 600 people had simply walked away and dissolved into thin air. Word of the abandoned village quickly spread, and authorities were called in. Investigators from nearby towns arrived, expecting to find evidence of some logical explanation. Perhaps a sudden natural disaster, an outbreak of disease, or even a mass migration. But as they combed through the town, their unease grew. Nothing made sense. Houses were still neatly arranged. Personal possessions sat undisturbed. Even money and valuables remained in place, untouched. If the villagers had fled, they hadn't taken anything with them. Then came the most chilling discovery of all. Inside the village schoolhouse, scrawled in jagged, almost desperate handwriting on the chalkboard, were the words, "There is no salvation." What did it mean? Who wrote it? Was it a warning, a prophecy, a message from someone or something responsible for the disappearance? Investigators had no answers, only questions. And here's where the mystery gets even stranger. Official reports on Hoer Verde's disappearance are incredibly scarce. Despite being one of the most unsettling cases of mass disappearances in history, no detailed government records exist, and no major news coverage from the time remains. It's as if this case was erased from history. Why? Who had the power to make a town disappear, not just physically, but from public record? This lack of official information has led many to speculate. Was there something about Hoer Verde that someone didn't want the world to know? These people truly just lost to time, or were they taken? And if so, by who? Or what? This was only the beginning of the chilling investigation. The cryptic message left behind. Authorities arrived the next day to investigate, expecting to find evidence of a mass exodus or perhaps a raid by bandits. But what they found was far stranger. Inside the local schoolhouse, written on a chalkboard in large, erratic letters, was a chilling message. There is no salvation. No one knew who wrote it or what it meant. But one thing was clear. Something had terrified the villagers so badly that they left in a hurry. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no bullet holes, no broken furniture, but there was an overwhelming sense of abandonment. Investigators noted that despite the eerie silence, the village had an air of unease, as if whoever left had done so in an overwhelming state of fear. Even the most hardened officers reported feeling watched, a lingering dread hanging over the town. Some claimed to hear faint whispers carried by the wind, though no one could find their source. Another unsettling discovery came from villagers in the surrounding areas. When questioned, they reported hearing strange noises coming from Hoer Verde in the nights leading up to its abandonment. Some described it as a low hum, like machinery deep underground. Others swore they heard panicked screams that cut off suddenly, but none of them dared to enter the town to investigate. Adding to the mystery, all clocks in the village had stopped at precisely the same time, 11:45 p.m. Was this the exact moment when the town's residents disappeared? Investigators couldn't determine why or how every clock had frozen at the same time. Was it some kind of electrical interference? Or was it something unnatural? Strangest of all, the town's church stood open, its candles still burning. It was as if someone had lit them shortly before the disappearance. An open Bible sat on the altar, turned to a passage from Psalms. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. But whoever had been reading it was long gone. With no bodies, no signs of an attack, and only these strange clues left behind, investigators were at a loss. What could cause 600 people to vanish without a trace all at once? And why did it seem like they had been preparing for something terrifying? Strange clues and theories. Investigators searched every home, every building, every field, but there were no bodies, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Even more disturbing, no footprints leading away from the village. It was as if 600 people had been erased from existence. As they continued their search, they made a series of chilling discoveries. First, in many of the homes, doors were left wide open, swaying gently in the breeze. The interiors showed no sign of ransacking or forced entry, but some items were oddly out of place. Chairs overturned, mirrors cracked, and in some cases, bed sheets that looked as if someone had left in the middle of the night. A few homes had candles still burning, melted down to nearly nothing, as if they had been lit hours before the disappearance. But by whom? Then they found something even more unsettling. The village's well was completely dry. The well, which had never run out of water before, had mysteriously emptied overnight. Investigators tested the soil and found it unusually damp, as if water had been absorbed into the ground at an unnatural rate. Could this indicate an underground disturbance? Perhaps an earthquake or sinkhole. But there was no physical evidence to support that theory. No cracks in the ground, no collapsed buildings. The well had simply stopped working. Then there was the church. While most of the village appeared abandoned in a rush, the local church was different. Inside, everything was in pristine condition. The pews were perfectly aligned, the altar untouched. But in the center of the room, right before the pulpit, lay a single pair of shoes. They looked as though their owner had stepped out of them and vanished where they stood. Investigators found this particularly disturbing. Why would someone remove their shoes at such a moment? And why was this the only personal item deliberately left behind? So what happened to Hoer Verde? Several theories emerged. Theory 1. A paranormal mass disappearance. Some believe Hoer Verde was a site of supernatural activity. Locals in nearby villages spoke of strange whispers in the forests, shadowy figures watching from the trees, and an ancient curse tied to the land. In fact, Brazilian folklore speaks of the Silent Ones, mysterious beings said to steal voices and erase memories. Could the entire population have been claimed by something beyond our understanding? Theory 2. A secret government experiment. Others suspect the government may have been involved. Brazil's military history includes classified operations, mind control experiments, and chemical warfare testing. Some researchers suggest the town was exposed to an unknown experiment, causing mass hysteria. Or worse. One investigator even noted that the soil in Hoer Verde showed high levels of radiation, something highly unusual for the area. Were they silenced? Theory 3. An alien abduction. Then there's the most bizarre theory of all, mass abduction. UFO sightings were reported in the area before the disappearance, and strange electromagnetic disturbances were recorded in nearby towns. Even more chilling? A few weeks after the disappearance, an anonymous letter was sent to a local newspaper. It simply read, "They came back, we ran." No one knows who sent it. Was it a hoax or a warning? Whatever happened that night in Hoer Verde, one thing remains certain. Something terrified an entire village into complete and utter silence. The mystery deepens. Decades later, no bodies have ever been found. No survivors have ever come forward. The village of Hoer Verde remains a ghost town, lost to history. But the strangest part, the case was reportedly removed from official Brazilian records. Some believe it's a cover-up. Others say it never existed. But what if that's exactly what someone or something wanted us to believe? Over the years, researchers and independent investigators have tried to piece together any remaining fragments of the case. But information is sparse, almost deliberately so. Some historical records briefly mention Hoer Verde, but its disappearance is barely acknowledged. Government archives hold no official explanation. Even the Brazilian press from the time period fails to provide coverage. It's as if an entire town and the mystery surrounding it was wiped clean from existence. Those who dare to visit the site today report an overwhelming sense of unease. Paranormal investigators claim to have captured strange sounds on audio recorders, distorted voices, unintelligible whispers, and even eerie pleas for help. Others say they've seen shadowy figures moving between the trees at the village's edge. The deeper you dig, the more disturbing the accounts become. One of the most unsettling stories comes from a group of urban explorers who visited the site in the early 2000s. They found remnants of the village, crumbling walls, rusting farm equipment. But what disturbed them most was what they found inside the remains of the schoolhouse. A chalkboard, miraculously untouched by time, with a faint, nearly erased message scrawled across it. They came back. The explorers left in a hurry, shaken by the inexplicable find. Some say it was a hoax. Others believe it was a message left behind by the lost villagers. Perhaps a warning. But if that's the case, who or what came back? Even more mysteriously, a local historian who was researching the case in 2010 reportedly received an anonymous phone call warning him to stop asking questions about Hoer Verde. The caller's voice was distorted, their identity impossible to determine. They simply said, "It's better to forget." But can we forget? What really happened to the people of Hoer Verde? Were they victims of an unknown force, a secret experiment, or something far beyond human understanding? Or perhaps more chillingly, are they still out there somewhere, watching, waiting? What do you think? The case of Hoer Verde remains one of the most chilling unsolved disappearances in history. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think happened? Do you believe in the paranormal explanation, or was there something more sinister at play? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe to @SpookyParanormalTales if you love eerie true stories. Join me next time for another thing.